You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogden. You know, the opioid crisis is such a huge issue. Communities are reeling from this. They don't know how to handle it. People are overwhelmed. The point is, there are lots of people in the world that need help. And if you're a coach or a consultant or you have any kind of a gift or experience in helping people, now is the greatest opportunity of your life. But you have got to learn how to put yourself out there and turn your gift into a business that is going to help people and is also going to pay your bills so that you can do more of what you do best. Today's guest has really mastered this, and I'm so excited to welcome Amy Guerrero. She is a trauma-informed recovery life coach and the creator of Thrive in Recovery. She combined her personal journey of healing her trauma and choosing a conscious, sober lifestyle with years of education to create a unique solution she now shares with others. Thrive in Recovery is an integrative approach to recovery that supports her clients to discover the root cause of the addictive escape, to reveal their true potential and purpose. Amy Guerrero, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Ralph, it's so great to be here. I got all jazzed with that music. It's amazing. I love this. Thank you so much for having me today.
Everybody says that. I'm so happy because if we're not pumped up, we're not going to pump anybody else up. So I'm really happy that it gets you going. It gets me going. I hope it gets our listeners going as well. You are the founder of Thrive in Recovery. You help people to discover their purpose and to create the life that they desire, to go beyond surviving and begin thriving in all areas of their life. There's got to be a story behind this because you don't just step into this on the spur of the moment or just think, well, I think this is the sort of business I want to go into. So I know there's a story there. Tell us a little bit more. How did you get started in this and what is your background?
Yes, I love it. Thank you. I got started on this well before I knew that I just had a heart to help people my entire life, Ralph. And, that really drove me into everything that I chose to do to make money in exchange for money, right? It's like, if I love to help people, then everything that I build my business around to create money for myself is going to be helping people. So I started my first business when I was in high school. And then shortly after in college, I got into the business of helping people in apartment communities. And I was an on-site manager. I was like 19 years old. And I learned so much about people and behaviors and patterns and, what people are like at home versus at work. And amazing. Like simultaneous to getting an education, I was able to get an education on behaviors from people in their home, from, just all these amazing transitions that they were going through, because mostly it was college students as well, and their parents and that whole process. So, it started then. Like, I knew I wanted to help people. However, I also decided to live in the most expensive city in the country, San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so in order to do that, I had to marry my talent, right? Like, okay, I'm going to grow my business in real estate, and I'm going to continue to serve people from my heart. So
your approach was you figured that in order to help people, that would have to be kind of a side thing, but your main business was that would actually make you money would be real estate. You didn't see that there was a way to merge how you wanted to help people with actually making a living. Is that fair to say?
At first, yeah.
Yes.
And what I did was, yes, thank you. That's exactly fair to say. And so in that, you can imagine when you have this real great like fire burning inside of you to be of service to people, and you have to meet the bottom line dollars of your employers, and that's not aligned, right? So in that becomes this like restlessness, this energy of like, oh my gosh, I don't really love what I'm doing. I don't believe in the things they're making me say and do. Like, I'd really like to run this from my heart, and it's not aligned. So there's a discontent going on there.
Sure.
And when that discontent was really kind of, just always there for me, I would escape with alcohol, with Xanax, with sugar, with sex, with, mindless behaviors that were not helping me live on purpose. And as a matter of fact, were just distracting me from that feeling inside my body that I was just like not happy doing this work this way. And I could see that I wanted to do it a different way. However, it wasn't necessarily supported in like a for-profit bottom line run business, right? And so how do I make that happen? And, it's really, I think for the listeners and for the people that I work with, this is very common in the human experience to be going through the motions of doing something and feeling this like energy inside of your body that's like, oh, something just does not feel right. And I'm not sure how to change it or how to fix it or how to transform it. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And suddenly, you have 15 pounds on you, or you're drinking a bottle of wine every night, or, your opioid medication ran out and you're like trying to figure out ways to feel that same numbness, really.
Yeah.
And it's all to avoid the feelings within you and that discontent within you.
So this is where you help clients to discover the root cause of their addiction. For people who don't understand addiction, who personally don't understand it or who have no experience with it, I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's these down and out, really people from the wrong side of the tracks. They are the ones that have the drug problems and they're the ones who have addiction issues. But what you're saying is that this can really happen to anybody who gets overwhelmed, it's not a conscious choice, but it's something that kind of sneaks up on a person and takes them over without them really realizing what's going on until it's too late.
100%. And what you shared earlier with the opioid crisis, like we're seeing it all across the world, not just the United States. And it really stems from this restlessness within the person. And, they go to their doctor and they're like, I feel depressed. I feel anxious. I feel lonely. I have a lack of energy. I've gained weight. I just have an overall blah. And the doctor, unfortunately, where I'm truly a rebel in this industry, is the doctor will throw some medicine at it, like, oh, we'll take this, take this SSRI, take this benzodiazepam and Xanax or something to make that feeling go away and ignore the root cause of what's actually happening here.
Yeah.
And maybe the person will seek a therapist and then they get into this cycle. And so many of the people that I work with have been in therapy for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they've just been in this cycle with no implementation from that root cause of like, well, why did this behavior start in the first place? And what are its strengths? Because every pattern that we create has strengths when it's used in the right way with the right sense of purpose and knowing why you're choosing to do that. And as we hear from so many of our great leaders, when you know why, the how becomes easy.
Exactly. But who is asking that? Most medical professionals, they're treating symptoms and they're not equipped and they don't have the time to get to the root of really what's going on. And all they're doing is managing symptoms and they never do get to the root cause in some cases.
100%. And I would truly say that I can say that with confidence about the treatment industry, whether it's for eating disorders or any kind of mental health and addiction, there's not the one-on-one time that is spent with someone to really truly understand their history from their perspective, and then give them real tools that will work in real time to integrate this process. Going away for 30 days and then coming back to all of the things that triggered you when you were active in these coping mechanisms is not healthy, because there's no integration. And then to just translate that into, go to one of the free support groups that are in your area, where really everyone is suffering in some way. And hearing stories and having community and having that connection is awesome. However, it's still distracting people from getting to the root cause, right? And like, as a society, there's no one that will argue that we are not so easily distracted these days. And to come home to ourselves feels foreign. And that's the big problem, right? It's like, it feels weird to feel my feelings because there's so many ways to distract myself. The number one thing right now is being really busy. And I like to remind people, like, you're really busy doing things you don't want to be doing.
Yeah. It's like you spend your life being busy, doing things you don't need to do, spending time with people you don't really want to spend time with, and meanwhile, just masking everything that's really going on. I think that's an epidemic. So then let me ask you, what was the turning point for you? What was the moment where you woke up and realized what was going on and began to turn that around for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. The turning point for me was when I spent 2 years really with this need to like feel love and feel accepted. And so do the things that everyone was telling me to do, the way that they were telling me to do it. And, as we discussed, like I have this defiant nature within me. And to me, that is a major, major, beautiful thing to cultivate within inside me to use for the best in the world. Right. Mm-hmm. And with this defiant energy, people are like, okay, you have to go to 12-step meetings. You have to call yourself an alcoholic. You have to, do this exactly like this, or you will drink again and you'll die.
Yeah. And you said, no, I don't have to do anything like that.
Yeah, I really did. I said, no, I would go to these meetings, especially when I was in treatment. And in 2014 was when I made the decision that I was going to step into this work. However, for 2 years, I really fought the system and no one was really supporting me from that place. So I really needed that defiance in order to advocate for myself. Mm-hmm. And what I saw in all of the different facilities was, if your insurance didn't cover it, then it wasn't available to you. And if the insurance wasn't reimbursing the treatment center, then they weren't going to offer it, because then they would have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, it all came down to this like bottom line of treating the symptoms, continuing to get the pay from the treatment centers. And I would just watch people, and me, one of them, cycle in this cycle of getting out of treatment, going to some free support system, that going maybe to some aftercare, and then 6 months later back in treatment. Mm-hmm. And it's a cycle that happens right now all the time. And I live in a place where there's 100 treatment centers in like a 10-mile radius. And the number of people that I see just coming back, I'm like, oh, you're here again. Yeah. It's real. And that's not treating the root cause of the problem. So when my real rebel fired up in me, I showed up to the treatment center and I was like, listen, I have a lot of ideas. I know what I need, and I need you to work with me. Like, I need to be here to be safe, and I will fully participate and I will do all the things. However, I need this amount of time to work on the things that I know. And that was all the holistic things that I knew to be true in order for real integration to happen, which included, movement and nutrition and spirituality beyond just God. Like, what is that relationship? What does it feel like in the body? What is the somatic experience that I'm having that really fires me up to want to choose? And this is why I call it a conscious, sober lifestyle. not just this lifestyle where I'm going one day at a time. Like, I really wanted to be conscious and aware and awake. And I was mad at this point because, quite frankly, I was suicidal and I wasn't successful at dying. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this energy to live like I've never lived before.
Wow. What a powerful testimony. Then you had a moment where I like to call people turn their mess into a message. And in your case, you turn things around with a lot of support, but doing it in your way. And then you turn that into a solution that you now offer to other people thrive in recovery. Tell us a little bit about how that works and who do you help?
Absolutely. So, I help people just like me. I help people who have tried everything and who have time in sobriety and still feel that restlessness, still suffer from that depression, anxiety, the loneliness, that lack of energy, living in a body that they don't really like. They're just restless and they are overwhelmed. They feel stuck. And maybe they haven't relapsed in the sense of, and I don't love that word. However, it's a word that we use in the industry, and so I'll use it here. But they've gone back to that coping mechanism, or they're highly considering it. And they just don't really like their life the way it is. And they've been conditioned to believe that, they will always be an addict or an alcoholic because of the programs that they've done until now. And it doesn't align with them and their true purpose and value anymore. And so they are just like, oh my gosh, I'm so unhappy. What can I do? And the brain is still wired to want to revert back to that behavior, right? Like that
Sure.
never completely goes away for anyone. Anyone who's tried to quit sugar or caffeine that's listening knows that, right? It's
Right.
like, okay. And then the brain's still like, oh, a cup of coffee would be so good.
We all have coping mechanisms, right? So some of us, some of us have a nervous breakdown, and that's how we cope with things. Other people, they take drugs. Some use alcohol. Other people, they overeat or they eat sugar. All of us have unhealthy things that we do to try and cope. And it's not that one is better or worse than the other. All of us have these moments when we feel overwhelmed and not able to deal with stuff. And it's just, some people go in one direction, some go in another, but it's all a cry for help, and it's all symptomatic of that root issue, isn't it? Regardless of how it manifests.
100%, absolutely. And I love that you really are driving that home for everyone that's listening, because it's so important to know that we are all human together and that we do not transcend the human experience while we're in these bodies, and so to really bring that compassion forward first to yourself and then to the people around you is really what will help transform it as a culture and really help us see that, like, wow, we're all addicted, I just used quotation marks in the air that now, in some way to not feeling our feelings. And when you choose to get to the root cause, when you choose to really look at that and go, oh, well, I created a pattern because when I was 3 years old, I was constipated and I was anxious and I was all these things, and it was never treated. It was never looked at. And
Right.
so I learned ways to survive my whole life. And then those ways to survive stopped serving me as I became as I grew older, as I started to become an adult, as I was a teenager, all of the things, like it's all just a pattern. And we know now, Ralph, that our brains and our bodies are able to transform. We have a microbiome that when treated and you start to really heal from that place, you will start thinking differently because it talks to your brain.
That's
and
right.
we know that the brain is plastic and we can change it, and epigenetics are real.
So what can someone, if they're listening to this and they're struggling in this area, and I really want to repeat and make sure for emphasis, I'm not just talking about if you've got an alcohol problem. I'm not just talking about if you have a opioid problem in your life. I'm talking about you could be addicted to your business, addicted to workaholism. Your relationships can be in disorder because you're out of balance. You're addicted to busyness, as Amy was talking about. So that there's lots of different ways that people try and cope. And some of those behaviors obviously are more unhealthy than others, and some can even be life-threatening. But what can someone begin to do if they recognize themselves in this situation, in this conversation? It resonates with them. Is there something they can begin to do to see some immediate improvement in this area?
Absolutely. That is such a great question. And I love giving real-time integration, right? So
Right.
When you feel that feeling, that whatever it is for you, right? It's like, oh, I feel some kind of way. I'm anxious. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed. Ugh, I'm about to explode. Take a breath. Like, come back to your breath. It's sometimes hard. So something that I, do is just touch a part of my body and say, what's the problem? Like, asking myself, what is the problem? And I really encourage you guys, like, put something, like, make it real so that you're touching something and you make it visceral. And then ask yourself, what's the problem? And I call this arresting the thought, because in that moment, any of the overwhelming thoughts have stalled. And you're like, oh, wait, I've re-engaged my prefrontal cortex, the smart part of my brain, and I'm back here and I'm taking a breath. And when you're in that space and you ask yourself what the problem is, it's so interesting. Quickly, you will identify what it is. And usually for me, it's like, oh, you haven't had enough water. Oh,
it can be that simple, couldn't it?
It can be. And it often is. Oh, I'm really hot right now. And I can't think, like, how can I cool myself down? And then sometimes it's a bigger problem, like, oh, you know what? When I get to the destination that I'm going to, I'm going to need to make sure I have a blender there, instead of like, oh my gosh, I can't fly and I can't do this, and arresting it and getting into the solution. And then the beautiful part about that is then celebrate what you just did, right? Because the brain loves the dopamine response. So when you're like, wow, I just stopped what could have gone down a rabbit hole. I could have been called a hot mess or a freight train, just like ruining the rest of my day, right? Instead, I touched something. I touched something on my body. I got back into my body. I took a breath and I said, what's the problem? And then I came up with a solution.
Yes. So you're breaking the pattern. And what you said is really interesting, because it triggers the idea that we can even become addicted to how we respond to these things. And then it becomes a self-perpetuating, destructive cycle. We get stressed out over our stress, and then that stresses us out. And it's just like a domino effect, isn't it?
It is. And not only that, Ralph, it's such a great point, because it becomes a sense of identity. And something that I work with people is that, in our process, we are consistently working on your true sense of purpose outside of all of these identifiers and labels. Like, what is it in your body? What emotions do you want to create within yourself on a consistent basis, and then use on purpose? That's how I put it, is like, use those emotions on purpose and share that with the world.
Yeah, such a great point.
And that is a beautiful process. Yeah.
Such a great point. Yeah, absolutely. Because we can have feelings, but we are not our feelings. We can have thoughts, but we are not our thoughts. We can control those thoughts. We can control those feelings, but we don't have to identify, well, this is the way I am. And once you lock into that, it's very difficult to change. But as you talked about, brain plasticity, you can retrain your brain to respond differently and more positively to what's going on. All of this is so fascinating, and our time is getting away from us. Before I let you go, I want to steer the conversation towards those coaches who have a heart to help people like you do. And they struggle because they don't know how to monetize their gift. Would you be willing to share how you worked through the money issue? How do you work through this idea of charging people for your services. So many people, so many coaches struggle with this. And if we can help them to see why they should not struggle with this and why they should charge what they need to charge so that they can help more people, I think this would really create some positive energy instead of people always being held back because they're afraid to ask for the sale. They are afraid to ask for money in the transaction, especially in a helping profession. And if that's the case, if you struggle with that, you're going to have a really hard time building your business, and you're going to have a hard time really creating transformative results for people. Would you be willing to share how you work through that and how others who struggle with that can learn from what you have learned?
Absolutely. And that's such a great topic. And thank you so much for bringing this to the conversation, because, you know, there are, just like you said, so many people who need support in the world. And there is a stigma around asking for money in exchange for support when it isn't licensed by the medical organization, right? Mm-hmm. And when something isn't working, then it's like we want to be able to support people where they're at. And you guys, if you are a coach and you struggle with this, I want to just really empower you right now to know that you are so valuable. And what I did and what I continue to do, because this is not a one and done rewire, right? Like, this is something that can consistently come up in your practice and the way that you serve and the way that you offer.
That's right.
And, you know, what I did first and foremost is like, I really looked back at everything that I'd invested in my life and how much like just nonsense I invested in to continue to mask who I really was. And when I got really clear that I was going to bring this to the world, and, you know, for me, it was very relevant because a lot of the support groups are free. And what I'm offering is not free. It is an investment into oneself. It is a continuing education that will last a lifetime. It is one-on-one support that is so valuable because I have invested in myself. So that's one big thing that I really encourage people to do is be willing to invest in yourself, in your education, in your mentors, because that is going to help give you the confidence to know that like you are valuable. And what you are providing has nothing to do with you and everything to do with that person. And when I am making an offer to someone, you know, I remind them this is an investment in you. And I call it an investment because it is truly an investment in their life. And however you're supporting someone, it is going to help them bridge the gap from where they are now and where they want to be. And nothing else has worked until now. And if you're in integrity with what you know you will deliver, and you deliver it, and you have the evidence and continue consistently to gain that history, to gain that knowledge, to look at the data and go, wow, like look at what I've done for this person for free. You know, look what I've given away. Now let me sit in my power, do this work with myself, show myself all of the history that like I am worth it. And this person, most importantly, you guys, that the person who's making this choice to come and be in this space with you, in this safe environment with you that you are providing for them, that they are worth it. You know, the biggest thing was for me to get out of my own way and to know that this was not about me. This is about the service that I'm providing to someone else. And there's such a freedom in that because it takes away that I have to do this. Now, I want to be really clear. We all have our own expenses that we invest in with ourselves, right?
Right.
So there also comes that like, this is where it gets tricky, right? Like, well, I've got bills to pay. Yes. And so does everyone else. And here's the bottom line. It's really much more difficult to stay in whatever cycle that you're in or that someone else is in, because that can go on for years. And it does often go on for years. than to stop and pause and say like, wow, I'm going to make more offers. I'm going to be consistent in making my offers so that I know that I have the investment to pay for my investments and that this person is getting out of their cycle as well. And I promise you guys that the transformation that you provide is going to bring this person that you're working with abundance in ways that are priceless.
Yeah.
You know, bottom line. And so, you know, I really wanted to give some like very strategic strategy, and I could spend all day long on mindset work. However, it's being in action that really makes the difference. You know, it's like every time you are there, make an offer. Make an offer. And whether or not you're exchanging thousands of dollars or, you know, we do not barter, and get out of the habit of bartering because, you know, barter doing anyone any service there. And it's keeping everyone in that mindset of, you know what, this isn't really valuable. I shouldn't ask for money for this. You know, I should just help. And the bottom line is we work in an economy of, you know, money, and it matters.
You know, everything you said is so spot on, and it really makes me think, you know, the medical profession doesn't have any problem at all charging you for treatment that doesn't get results. They're practicing medicine on you. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, regardless, you still have to pay for it. And that led to another thought. You're paying for the results you're getting, good or bad. There's a cost associated with every action that you take. The question is it worth the price you're paying? So you're paying a price to go it alone without support. You're also paying a price if you get the expert help to take you where you want to be. Either way, you're going to pay for the results you're getting. The question is it worth the price that you're paying? Amy, this has been such a terrific conversation. I hope it is really motivating and inspiring to our listeners. As much as it is to me, this is really, really diving deep into how do we take a tremendous problem and turn it into an incredible opportunity. So I thank you so much for being on the show. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you first for having me so much. This has been quite enjoyable. And, you know, it really brings me back to why I'm here and my purpose. And, you know, I want everyone to know that, you know, when we have these beautiful, expansive conversations, to know that your purpose are feelings that you cultivate within yourself. And everyone is put here for some reason. And it is possible to like Ralph said, make your mess into your message, and to do it feeling good about it and truly knowing that everything that got you to right here, right now, listening right now, happened on purpose. And you can continue to cultivate emotions that make you feel good and live that way for the rest of your life.
Excellent, excellent words of wisdom from Amy Guerrero. She is a trauma-informed recovery life coach and the creator of Thrive in Recovery. You can find out more and connect with Amy at amyguerrero.com. And we'll have that link on the Rebelpreneur website as well. Amy, it's been a real pleasure to get to know you. Thank you so much for your time, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Ralph.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.